So let us just jump into Genesis, and we start reading from chapter 1 and verse 1, saying, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." Now, if you have a problem with that one line, if you have a problem with "in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth," it means that you're going to have a problem with the rest of the book, because it has introduced this phenomenon of cause and effect. Okay, saying that in the beginning there was this singularity, and this singularity caused the heavens and the earth to spring up. Now, whether you interpret the heavens and the earth as the earth and then the kingdom of God, or the ground and the sky, because both can be used as heavens and earth. um, Heavens can refer to God's kingdom. It can also refer to the skies in the Bible. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, given this case for causality, saying that at some point in time, the universe came into existence. Now, the beauty about 20th century science is that scientists have come to the conclusion that at some point the universe had a beginning, and this is what is referred to as the Big Bang. I said when I was talking about having an abundant life, that we were going to go back to simplicity in Christianity, and I hope we can go back to simplicity. And I would love to go back to simplicity, but I can't really explain this point without talking about big broad subjects, because it also requires reasonable faith, and not just faith that says that, well, I believe in God, and then when scientific quote unquote fact, I was going to do quotation marks, but I realized that you can't see me do quotation marks. But I realized that if I did if you just say that, well, I just believe, the Bible tells us that we should be able to give an account for our beliefs. And so when talking about the beginning of time, it's also good to just venture a little bit into scientific terminologies. So now coming back to this, it brings two aspects, in fact three aspects of the arguments for the existence of God. The first one being causality. And to help me with the notes, I'm reading from my book Larger Than Life, or I'm getting my notes from my book Larger Than Life. It starts with causality in the sense that we see the principle of cause and effect being established here. Because if you go by conventional wisdom, scientific wisdom, it starts by saying, in the beginning there was nothing, and then it exploded. Now, that's a very layman's attempt to disprove people that don't believe in God. But to be fair, scientists actually try to say that it wasn't nothing necessarily, but it was something else that became something. And so they try to lump it as, well, the universe has been in existence. It was just, we just don't know what it was before it came into existence. Now, we believe that God chose to bring forth the universe into existence. They do not have an answer to what brought the universe into existence. And that's why you have things like string theory, dark matter, and all these views in cosmology that bring us back to what really happened. Are there traces for us to find out the origin of life? Because here's the thing: if you believe that you came from nothing, you believe that you're going nowhere. And if you believe that you're going nowhere, even your moral standing doesn't really matter, because then it is subject to you as a person. And if you choose to be a good person, a quote unquote good person, because you can't really know what good is without an objective standard telling you that this is good and this is bad, you if you choose to be a good person outside of having an objective moral framing, that's kudos to you. But a lot of people, and this is how our world works, this is how our bodies work, is that the more that you start consuming, the more that you want, the more that you want, the more that you want. This is why it is very dangerous to enter into certain habits. That's why when somebody tells me, hey, what do you think about porn or drugs or alcohol? I say, on their own, they're not inherently wrong. Like, oh, porn is not bad. Uh, um, it is bad because obviously you're watching fornication and you're watching immorality and all that jazz. But then it makes you, I think the horrible part about porn and drugs, but porn in particular, because I just said they're not inherently bad. But the thing that is bad about porn is that it makes you an idol worshiper. You can't eat, you can't sleep without getting your fix. You can't eat, you can't sleep without getting your fix. And so, because you can't eat and you can't sleep without getting your fix, that becomes what your focus in life is that now you start getting more. You started by watching one adult star, you then move to two, three, four. But at the end of the day, your brain is rotten because you have so many adult stars that this one, because of certain features, I watch her, and because of other certain features, you watch her. Now, bringing it to a realism perspective, your partner does not live up to those standards that you've set, and you never truly be satisfied because she doesn't have the breasts of the lady that you like, she doesn't have the butt of the lady that you like, he doesn't have the girth or the length of the guy that you saw in that movie. And I say that because sometimes we always just typecast it to guys watching porn, but ladies also watch porn too. Maybe not to the extent that guys watch porn, but if you've had a conversation with the lady that loves porn, she enjoys speaking about body parts a lot. She asks you very, very inappropriate questions, and it's very, very uncomfortable. And I'm not trying to put a double standard saying that guys shouldn't ask girls uh, questions like that. No, no, it's inappropriate to talk about people's body parts if you're not their doctor or in a certain context. But it's very, very inappropriate, and I find girls who speak to me about body parts, I find them very, very unnerving. Yeah, yes, but back to what I was saying is that this world, or these bodies that we have, always want more, always want more, always want more. And so chances are, if you have no objective moral framework guiding you, and for some people, they say, well, I don't need the Bible to guide me. And I have this self-help book that helps me out. That is you adhering to the principles of some guru, and you're making them your God, because then you are trying to look for an objective moral framework to help dictate your life, because you realize that your life becomes meaningless when you're consuming and consuming and consuming and consuming. You end up being consumed yourself, and so now you're in a dark place, and you're looking for an objective moral framework, and you go to these relationship gurus, you go to these self-help gurus, you go to all these gurus because you have perceived them to be god-like figures in your life, and so you need their moral framework, and you're hoping that their moral framework will work with you, so that you can get out of that. And this is inherently what I talk about in my book, is that we are all subject to believing in a God. And just because you don't live with the principles of my God from the Bible doesn't mean that you're not looking for certain morals, whether it's the constitution of your country or it's somebody who you've just perceived to have everything given to them, or not everything given, somebody who you just think is at a higher level than you reach that place and you're like, okay, i know what I need to do. I just need to follow what they do. I need to follow their instruction, because there is a pseudo objection to their morality, their principles, their habits that you want to follow for yourself. Yes. So back to what I was saying, is that you have scientists looking to the origins of the universe, because we it's hard to believe that we came from nothing and we're going to nothing. Or maybe we just think that life is more than we think it is. But sometimes it's sad hearing people who, not even just atheists, but people who just don't believe in anything. They're not atheists per se. They would acknowledge a higher being, but they're not Christian or Muslim, or they don't adhere to an organized religion, as they put it. Even when some people say that, well, I just believe that I'm just going to go into the ground, or they just say that, well, for me, just burn me to ashes. Um, it's very sad, because you can hear that their lives, in essence, are purposeless, because it just starts and ends here. And so they start to look for everlasting mortality. And here's the thing, is that for as long as this earth exists, we will remember you. But when the earth passes away, and according to scientists, it's going to a heat death, all that will be forgotten. And so it brings up the first argument for the is that God caused us to be born. God caused the universe to come into existence. And because we are looking towards God, we are looking towards something that's bigger than this world. We're looking towards something that's actually beyond this world. And here's the thing. I know I say here's the thing a lot, but here's the thing, is that if indeed there was life before the universe began before yeah, life before the universe began, then there'll be life after the universe is done, because we have a hope. And that's in essence why the resurrection of Christ is the single most important event in the history of the universe, because none of us know what happens when we die. We can go to the Bible, it tells us that, okay, there's Abraham's bosom and all that stuff. We can go to the Quran, saying you go to Jannah and all that stuff. You can go to the Eastern religions, they'll tell you about reincarnation, and that what you do in this life will make you come back as something in the next life. We can talk about all those theories. We can talk about all that. And you can be an atheist and say nothing happens when you die. We don't know. We don't know. All those are conjectures. All those are conjectures. But then comes this man from Galilee, from Nazareth, to be exact, and he predicts his death and resurrection and accurately pulls it off. We don't know what happens when we die, but if that guy says, well, I'll die and I'll come back to life, he removes the impact of death in our lives, because we know that we're not going to be lost to the earth. We're not going to just disappear. If that guy can come back and gives us hope that we can come back, gives us hope and says that we can come back, then you know that death is not the end. And there is more to life than just this world. Outside of causality, I haven't given an argument for causality, but I'm just saying that if I think I've given arguments for God's existence in other Bible, in other Grace Apologetics sessions on podcast, on blog, even in the book, so you can look at that. But then outside of that, there now comes in necessity, where you have beings or things that exist necessarily, like numbers. They just exist. There's no beginning, there's no end. You get something, you put it there. You get another thing, it becomes two things. You get another thing, it becomes three things. God becomes a being that exists necessarily, because then if God had a beginning, we'll enter into what we have, what we call an infinite regression, where if God is the start, if God's at some point started, who was there before God, and who was there before God, and who was there before God, who was there before God, or that God, or that God, or that God, or whatever, or however you'd like to put it. So there would be that infinite regression. There would be that infinite regression of where did the who is the first God, or where did that God come from? It's like I'll give a very modern example. I'll give a very modern example of Avatar, The Last Airbender. I loved that show growing up. I still love it now, though I'm always conflicted with watching it. But it's a very long chain of avatars, because we from where we started watching, we saw Avatar Aang, Avatar Roku, Avatar Kyoshi, and then you go after Avatar Kyoshi, there's Avatar Kurok, there's Avatar Yanchin, and so on and so forth. We never knew who, at the time we were watching Avatar The Last Airbender, we did not know who the first Avatar was. As far back as we went was Avatar Yanchin, in the episode where the lion turtle first makes its first appearance. But then after that, we have the legend of Korra that now explains the first Avatar. Now shows you the origin of the Avatar. That would be the same situation with God if it did not exist necessarily, because the question is, who was the first God? Who was the first God? But even that can't be answered, because then it's still going infinitely. Because, okay, if that God, how did that God become God? He would have to exist necessarily for him. Even in an infinite regression, there has to be one that exists necessarily. And lastly, it becomes a case of the fine tuning argument, because we realize that God created the heavens and the earth. Okay, that was just verse 1. And now the earth was without form and void, and darkness